Hello, this is Strategy Miscellany here with episode 4 of the Kerbal Space Program campaign. I figured it would be fun to just start things off with a launch today. So 3, 2, 1, ignition. So this here is Void Seeker 3. Basically, we haven't launched anything that's gone outside of Kerbin's sphere of influence yet. We haven't gone into space where the primary force acting on it is not Kerbin's gravity, but the sun's. And so that's what this little probe is meant to do. Now, you may be asking why it's called Void Seeker 3. So I will admit I have experimented with a couple more designs before this one that ran into problems in their atmospheric ascent. The first one didn't have the right thrust-to-weight ratio. The thrust on the bottom stage was too weak to really do much. It started to run into trouble at about 10,000 meters. And the second one didn't have enough fins on it to keep it stable in flight, and so it really had a lot of trouble spinning out, especially after we ditched the solid rocket boosters, essentially. So that's what this is meant to fix here. And let's see. Here we go. Facing towards the sea. Now you can see right now we're decelerating, but pretty quick we're going to ditch these solid rocket boosters that are empty now. I just wanted to get us a little bit of angle first. There we go. Crashing into each other spectacularly. Beautiful. And so, what I will admit is that what I've been doing in regards to reverting flights, my principle is that if the disaster with the spacecraft happens before we reach orbit, basically, then that's something that would have been caught in a simulation or a test flight, and we can reset without the death of any Kerbals involved. If it's something that goes wrong after we reach orbit, then that means we didn't catch it in testing, and we have to consider the flight as actually flown and not just as a simulation. But that's my sort of personal rules for it. Obviously, in the real space program, you don't just, build the rocket and then suddenly fling it into space. And that's why I allow myself those reversions of flights. There are some mods and things that let you actually do a simulator launch. I'm not using the career mode, so the money doesn't particularly matter. So I haven't really bothered with that. I've just been, like I said, reverting the flights when it seems necessary and realistic that there would have been a test before that, and not reverting the flights otherwise. This is actually the first one I've had to revert, I believe. So let's get the second stage going. And so, see, this stage will get us almost into orbit, if not all the way into orbit. Although, if it gets us all the way into orbit, I'm still going to drop it off before fully circularizing so that it burns up in the atmosphere instead of polluting low Kerbin orbit. It just seems like the right thing to do, although, to be honest, space debris is not that much of a problem in the game. You're pretty unlikely to crash into your own space debris. Oh, I see why I can't steer. It's because the middle engine isn't on. There we go. Now I have that nice gimbaling. So that was a staging mishap. That happens sometimes. Alright. So we're getting out of the atmosphere. I'm going to put a cut in here and get back to you once we reach orbit. So, here we are at second stage separation. And you can see the third stage does still have a little bit of work to do to get us into a circular orbit. Periapsis is still under the ground. But we should be circularizing any second now. And then to get out of the Kerbin system, the Kerbin Moon Minimus system, I am going to do a gravity assist around the moon. I wouldn't really need to do this, to be honest. This thing has plenty of delta V to do it by itself, but it'll be fun to do a gravity assist and demonstrate how that works. I honestly don't use them probably as much as I should. Alright, we're going to skip ahead here so that we can burn at apoapsis more easily. Flying over the continents and the oceans until we get to about a minute or so before apoapsis, so we can circularize out there. Perfect. Alright. And get the periapsis up to something reasonably matching the apoapsis, so we have at least a semicircular orbit up here. Excellent. Now we're going to plan ourselves a little gravity assist around the moon. So I'm going to set the moon as my target. And actually, we should be in place to burn towards it pretty quickly here. Let's see. Okay, that's something. Looks good. So now what we want to do is we want to burn behind the moon, so that we get flung out into a higher orbit by it. So right now, I think we're in front of the moon because we're getting flung into a lower orbit. What we want to do is go behind it. Whoa. Yeah, see, now we're being flung into interplanetary space. We're going to come out here. We're going to come screaming around the moon. We're going to be launched into interplanetary space. Beautiful. And we can do that for only 1,300 kilometers per second of delta V. And we'll be at the node very shortly now. Let me just extend our fancy antennae on this craft so that we can make sure it gets signal. Where did I put those? There they are. All right. And we'll start the burn. I'll go ahead and skip ahead. Now we're passing the moon. That'll be the next interesting thing we do here. So I will see you in a minute. Well, I had to do a little bit of a course correction to get the orbits to match just right. And I ended up actually setting it so that we go a little bit kind of under the moon as opposed to just straight around it, so that we get launched a little bit out of the plane of the ecliptic of the solar system. I figured that'll be a slightly more interesting flight, although unfortunately this craft is going to get out of communication range pretty quickly after it leaves Kerbin's sphere of influence. So here we are, rocketing towards the moon. I set it for a pretty low pass. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be on the night side, so we won't see that much. But you can see we're getting closer to the moon, we're going fast, and we're getting sort of dragged by its gravity now as we go over the dark side. And now we are on a trajectory that leads us out of the Kerbin system. Let me just make sure. Yep, that's correct. We escaped the moon in 7 hours. We escaped the system in 7 days. Although I'm probably going to do another burn to put us on a more interesting trajectory too. So here we are escaping the moon. Now we're just in Kerbin's sphere of influence, going this way. 7 days out, and you can see then we end up in a solar orbit. Not too different from Kerbin's right now because, well, we're not escaping by that much velocity. But I'm going to change that by doing another burn. I've got some extra delta V to spare. So let's start blasting forward. You can see us starting to kind of tilt our orbit relative to Kerbin's. We're going into a plane change here, kind of. And also extending our apoapsis outwards. So I'll put a little cut in here and show you what the orbit looks like once it's complete. Well, here's a shot of our little craft burning away with its little antennae. I believe that's Kerbin in the distance there. There's the sun. So yeah, I'll be right back. So you can see this is our final solar orbit. Not super interesting, but a good start. So we will reach that point in 1 day and 5 hours now. So let's zoom forward a little bit. Leave little Kerbin behind. The time warp goes down like that to avoid big errors when you change spheres of influence, basically, is why it forces you to do that. But we are now orbiting the sun, as you can see by our much faster orbital velocity and our much longer distance to it. And the good news is we still have a good signal, so that means we can do some science. I'm going to make sure I've got some solars facing the sun right now so that I can recharge. You can see I put some panels on here, some others on the bottom there. There we go. So we'll take a temperature readout, although as they say, it's hard to say what temperature means out in the vacuum of space. We'll take a pressure readout and find no existence of the luminiferous ether. We will observe the mystery goo. It seems to like it here. And lastly, we'll do our science module. And it has been irradiated. So there's our first probe beyond Kerbin's sphere of influence. And let's go back to the Space Center and get ready to land on the moon. So we should have enough for another piece of technology here. Just look real quick. Oh, I would like to get these little nose cones. I think this one includes the little nose cones. And fairings could be nice too. Maybe it doesn't include the little nose cones. It does include some good decouplers though. So I think that might be the one. Oh, aerodynamics includes the little nose cones. Well, let's get aerodynamics first. At some point, I'll probably do an extra video because it's not really related to the campaign, but it's fun to do and demonstrate building an airplane, flying it around, looking at some of the interesting sights on Kerbin. That'll probably go in the Kerbal Space Program Extras playlist that I'll put together along with things like building submarines, building boats, trying to build a mech, the goofy stuff that doesn't really fit the program. So, if you recall, last time we were trying to build a probe to go land on the moon, and it did not work. I didn't put enough delta V in the landing stage, and it crashed into the surface. So I'm going to build a second attempt at a moon probe. This will be Luna 3. And we will see if this one does any better. I will get back to you once it's built and show you what we've got. So, this is Luna 3. If you were being polite, you might say it has an unorthodox design. If you were being rude, you'd probably say it looks absurd. Basically, we've got these quality solid rocket boosters, but haven't really invented enough liquid fuel boosters good enough to make a big long rocket to match them. So we've got these kind of goofily long SRBs tied to a fairly small skipper for the first stage. Then we've got a second stage at the 1.875 meters with a Bobcat. We've got a third stage that will actually take the craft to a moon impacting trajectory, and that's powered by an LV909. And then we've got the last little stage here, just a little fuel tank and these little ones on the sides. And this is the stage that will actually manage the deceleration and landing on the moon. And hopefully we can even do a little hop to another biome. We'll see if this has the fuel or not to do that. But regardless, I'm pretty confident if this can survive ascent, it will get to the moon successfully. So let's give it a go. So on my last launch of this, I made a dumb staging mistake. I actually just connected the boosters straight onto this ship here. And so when I detached the first stage, the whole thing fell off, including the skipper engine, which still had some burning to do. So I'm going to try that again and see if we can get a better orbit this time. I could have also set it so that these actually break off, but I think this will actually work pretty well. Especially if I keep the main engine on pretty close to full power. It should actually burn out either a little bit before or around the same time as these big old SRBs. So I'm going about straight up right now because I don't want to be in the thick atmosphere when I'm moving really fast. And this thing is going to have a pretty crazy high thrust-to-weight ratio at certain points when the solid rocket boosters are real close to burnout. But we'll start tipping over very slightly. And we'll go blasting through that layer of cloud. Up at 10,000 meters. And we'll see how this one does. Alright. 20,000 meters. Yeah, if I had crew on this, I probably wouldn't want to be going this fast. Although, you know, we're not in the red. It'd be okay, I suppose. We are starting to have a little bit of heating problems up at the top, but the good news is our SRBs just burned out. So all we've got left is about 30 seconds of the main rocket. And we're getting out of the atmosphere, so I can basically turn over flat now. And use this last little bit of thrust, and then we'll shift into the next stage. Definitely out of the atmosphere now. Alright, let's bring this next stage forward a little bit. Turned those on a little too quickly and broke the shroud around the engine, but doesn't appear to have damaged anything, so that's all to the good. Spin the rocket around a little bit. I suppose really now that it's in space I should turn off the fins working to actually steer the ship, because they're not doing anything. But it's not a big deal. Alright, let's see what the orbit mode shows us now. Yeah, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and burn closer to periapsis with that last 46 seconds. Excuse me, burn closer to apoapsis. So we did this so that we could wait until we're right up here at the apoapsis so that we're raising the periapsis more effectively. And we've got about 30 seconds left on this stage. Alright, with that stage done, we shift on to the lunar transfer stage here. And let's extend the antennae. And you know, we can go ahead and extend the landing gear too. There's no friction out here. Alright, we're just about to circularize. You can see the camera doing its thing. Now, it might be fun to fly a plane to some of these little islands. I have to do that sometime. Alright, that's circular enough. So now, next step is to get us on a trajectory that intersects with the moon, of course. So, probably something like here. So I do want this stage to actually impact the moon so that it's not cluttering up space. So let's get it to a point where we're actually hitting the moon here, if possible. Whoa. All right, beautiful. We'll actually have a little bit left to decelerate with this stage too. Perfect. So now that's warped to the node, and I'll cut to the burn here. Here we are over a pretty dark part of the night side of Kerbin. You can see some city lights over there to the north of us. And we've got our burn going. I will cut back when we're on our way to the moon. Alright, so we're on our way to a course that will intersect the moon. Once we reach its sphere of influence, we will make some adjustments, use some of this 826 delta V to slow us down and get us in a good position for a landing. And then it'll be on to the landing stage to make the actual landing. So, here we are, approaching. What we want is we want to land on the day side of the moon, and we want to land on the side of the moon facing Kerbin. Now, doing those both at once might be a little bit difficult right now, but if we land on the night side, we can always wait for it to become day. We don't want to land on the side not facing Kerbin because we would lose probe control. So, let's start by decelerating a little bit here, just so that we're falling straight down towards the moon. So I'm just, as you can see, lowering our orbital velocity so that we come basically straight in. All right, that's a good start. Let's get a little closer to the moon and see how everything starts to line up. This looks pretty good. And we'll have to see if there's anywhere particularly interesting to land on this sector of the moon. Nice big crater or anything like that. If there's not, that's okay. This is just the first mission. It's really just to show we can land on the darn thing, more than to explore any particular part of it. All right, time for a little adjustment burn to figure out where we're going to land. So let's say we did a maneuver, a minute ahead. And let's say we burned up and back. Yeah, why not somewhere like here? I think I see a little crater there. Let's aim for the center of that. See us coming in. Our target is that crater I've got my cursor right on, and hopefully we can land on it. The nice thing with the moon is it's tidally locked to Kerbin, so its rotation speed is not very fast. You don't have to worry so much about the difference between orbit and surface velocities. All right, take a little look at where we are. Let us get a little closer in. Pretty soon we'll have to ditch this ascent stage. Get ready to just use the landing stage. Looks like we need to lean a little bit over too. Let's do that. A little bit this way, if you will. That looks nice. All right. And burn. And And let's just overshoot a little bit by using up this stage here. And we can always decelerate the other way with the next stage. All right. And ditch the stage. Engine's working. We'll do our next deceleration burn at about here. Whoa, not there. What are you doing? Right there. Yeah, that's better. All right, I skipped us ahead to the next deceleration burn. Oh, these are kind of loud engines, aren't they? Turn that down for the next burn. So you can see now we're going right in the pocket. I'll skip ahead to closer to the landing here. All right, now we need to do a quick deceleration burn. Just lowering the volume there on the engines. Now, hopefully I didn't wait too long to turn these on. I might have let myself get too close to the ground, in which case we'll have an interesting little impact, but I think we'll have the space to decelerate. And yeah, we will. And land right in this crater. So now I want to start going vertical. And just adjust a little bit here. All right. If we were landing on a crater wall, we'd basically be there already. But we got to get into this crater here. And yeah, we'll definitely have the Delta V to do a little hop. Maybe we'll go to a pole. And the good news is, we've got vision on Kerbin. We've still got 100% capacity on our antennae. I'm trying to see where Kerbin is in the sky. Don't see it right now, but it must be somewhere. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to land. Alright, doing this last kind of deceleration. This part's always a little bit touch and go. You're landing on a body that doesn't have atmosphere, so you can't really rely on parachutes in any way. You gotta do a full powered landing, as it were. About 600 feet above the lowest, 600 meters above the lowest points on the lunar surface right now. Pretty soon, gotta do another deceleration burn. Now, if you're really good at this, you can do what's called a suicide burn and do all your burning right at the last minute and then, you know, reach zero velocity just as you reach the ground. I'm generally not that good, but that's what the real pilot experts do. All right, and oh, accidentally started to go up there. Yeah, see, this is an advantage that we have in Kerbal Space Program over real life, is all the engines can dethrottle down to these tiny levels. Although the real-life lunar landing module could do that, as it had to, for obvious reasons. Here we are, at the surface of the moon. Magnificent desolation and all that. So, let's do our scientific experiments here. We've got our big science module. From an exotic crater. Interesting. We've got our thermometer. It says it's 235 Kelvin, so not too different from temperatures on Earth, really. No air pressure, of course. And yeah, let's see if we can do a little hop with this guy. Land somewhere else interesting. Like maybe on that kind of white hillock over there. That looks good. Oh, there's Earth barely in the horizon. We might not be able to do that one. Let's do a hop north instead. Land on that white hillock, let's say. All right, so we got 1600 meters per second of delta V. Let's see if we can get to another biome. Unfortunately, I forgot to put mystery goo on this one, so we don't get that science, and the science module can only work once. So we won't get too much more science, but I mean, it's the first time on the moon. We have to take advantage of it. Let's go. Alright, so I'm burning about 45 degrees. I don't want to crash into the wall at the canyon, of course. And let's see what this looks like, this trajectory. Okay. So then I would like to go a little bit west. Hopefully I have the delta V to actually do this and don't end up humiliatingly splattered across the surface. But if we do, I mean, the probe has served its purpose. It's okay. This is more just kind of stretching out the mission, like when NASA tries to get their rovers on Mars to do more than they were originally planned to do. And there we go, landing point right around that hillock, and we've got some delta V left for the landing. See if we can make this work. And up we go. Might be a difficult landing, too. Surface might be kind of rough over there. We'll see how it goes. All right, let's see what this looks like now. I think that's our target, that nice little hill there. So given that, well, first we can decelerate a little bit. And then I want to take us a little bit more east. Oh, oops, I want to take us a little bit more east, I said. Yeah, beautiful, like that. Skip ahead a little bit. Although not too much. This point looks pretty high up relative to the rest of the moon. So I'm going to decelerate a little bit above my trajectory, basically to try and keep my landing point the same. See how I did. Okay, we're maybe overshooting it a tiny bit. That's pretty good. There we go. And coming in for our landing. Second landing on the moon today. Now I'd like to land right on top there. So let's maybe go like this. Be nice to land right on top of this mountain here. Yeah, you can see we're like 3,000 meters up from the lowest point on the moon now. Serious high point. I'm actually going to even accelerate the other way a little bit. Basically, I'm killing my vertical velocity, but keeping my horizontal velocity about 20 meters per second that way. So we can actually land on this ridge here, have a nice stable landing site. Should be a nice view of the moon around it from up here. I mean, it wasn't mentioned in the science equipment, but presumably they stuck a camera on here. I mean, come on, it's the first time you're going to the moon. You'd stick a camera on there. All right, getting ready for the landing. Little bit of a slope, but it should be okay. Once we get to about 100 meters up, we'll do a deceleration, maybe more like 150. All right. Yeah, we're on a bit of a slope, but I don't think this will tip over. It's not that top heavy, I hope. No, perfect. So we have 556 delta V left. That's not really much to do much of a hop. I think I'll leave this whole fellow here, looking out over the surface of the moon. So we'll do that last science. The highlands, again, of course, there's no pressure. Thermometer, it's a little warmer up here. Seems to be going up. Maybe the sun is rising over this bit or something. Get a nice angle for our screenshot, our thumbnail. That looks good. And let's go back to the Space Center. Well, let's warp to daytime so we can be ready for our next launch. And we've got enough science to buy a couple more things here. Oh yeah, better landing legs, wider heat shields, all that good stuff. So our next mission is going to be to take a slightly modified version of this out to Minmus. I think I'll change it a little bit because I'll want a little bit more delta V on the ascent stage and a little bit less on the actual landing stage because the gravity on Minmus is so darn low. And it'll look pretty similar to this one, so I'll probably skip through most of it until we actually get out to Minmus. And then after that, we'll try and do a moon landing with actual crew. Send a Kerbal onto the surface of the moon. But that'll both be for next episode. So for now, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.